Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now NHL, local experts on the biggest stories on the ice. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. We have our Locked On NHL hosts here. They're ready to recap a very full night of NHL action from Thursday, but we're going to start with our biggest game in Calgary.
The biggest game.
The Flames won the biggest game of the night thanks to the sixth hat trick of Johnny Gaudreau's career. Locked On Flames has the tea after beating the reigning champs.
So, Johnny Gaudreau had a hat trick tonight. That was his first hat trick since 2019 against the New Jersey Devils. Michael Backlund also had a goal. It was quite an unfortunate night for the Tampa Bay Lightning as they just let themselves unravel and showed their truly undisciplined selves after they allowed Sean Monahan to get under their skin when all he did was close the distance between him and Steven Stamkos. You're really going to allow a fourth-line center with a bum hip, mind you, to get under your skin like that? Oh, please. Johnny Gaudreau for heart, everyone.
Not quite time for a full panic, but Tampa Bay has now dropped 2 games in a row as they fell to Calgary last night. Locked On Lightning rehashes what went wrong post-game.
Well, it was a night to forget up in Calgary as the Tampa Bay Lightning lose their second consecutive game of the season. That's the first time all year long, falling 4-1 to the Flames, who are one of the best teams in the Western Conference. The only goal in this one coming from Alex Killorn, his 18th of the season. Just a tough game from the get-go. That's what happens when you go up north. We saw on the show that this was going to be a tough stretch for the Lightning out in the Pacific Northwest. They look to bounce back up in Edmonton on Saturday. And tune into the next episode of Locked On Lightning as I'll recap tonight's game, all that and more.
David Pastrnak playing hero on Thursday night at the TD Garden. Locked On Bruins recaps how a late goal from Pasta got Boston the win over Chicago.
Things finally went the Boston Bruins' way in the final minute of a game after going 3 over their past 4 games, allowing a game-tying or game-winning goal in the final minute of regulation. The Boston Bruins turned the tables and scored with about 17 seconds left against the Chicago Blackhawks to get a much-needed victory. This is Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, and it was David Pastrnak who scored the game-winning goal late in the third period off a great effort from Taylor Hall to get him the puck in front of the net, burying it past Kevin Lankinen. The Bruins now are 8-1-1 over their past 10 games, very much trending in the right direction with just over a week until the trade deadline. And as we go down the home stretch of the regular season, catch all the latest on the black and gold on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast hosted by myself, Ian McLaren.
The Senators overcame a slow start just in time to get an OT victory over the Kraken. Locked On Senators has more on that dramatic finish.
Never in doubt. I'm Ross Levitan from the Locked On Senators podcast with a quick recap of a 4-3 overtime win on home ice where Josh Norris scores 2 goals, including the overtime game winner, in his 100th career NHL game. It was a great start. Ottawa got out to a 3-0 lead heading into the third period where they've been automatic when leading after 2 periods. After tonight, they're 18-1-1 in 20 games when leading after 40 minutes, but it became eerie as Seattle scored 2 goals in quick succession and then added a third to tie this game at 3, and the Senators of old would have folded like a cheap tent and allowed Seattle to get the win, but not this team. Hard-fought overtime. Stützle draws a penalty, and next thing you know, Josh Norris from his office gets his 37th goal in his 100th game. This kid is a complete star in the making. For more on this game and the weekend ahead for the Belleville Senators, join us on Locked On Senators podcast wherever you download yours, because we've got your team every day.
3 third-period goals from the Maple Leafs forced overtime last night, but Arizona was able to salvage a win in OT. Locked On Coyotes tells you how they got it done.
Are the Coyotes the hottest team in the NHL right now?
Or is the craziness of March just extended its way to hockey? Because the Arizona Coyotes have won their 4th straight game and remain perfect to start the month of March with a 5-4 overtime win over the Toronto Maple Leafs most recently. This was another crazy game, another high-scoring game for the Arizona Coyotes. And they pull it off again. Yet another win, despite that scare in the third period, allowing 3 goals in a row. Well, 2 goals in 10, and just like less than a minute apart. But, that was a scare for the Arizona Coyotes. But let's give a shout out to the people who contributed. Jacob Chikrin, 2 goals for himself, including the game-winning goal in overtime. Matias Michelli, the rookie coming up from the Tucson Roadrunners, 2 points for himself already. Alex Galchenyuk, a former Maple Leaf, goes and gets 2 points himself as well. Obviously, there are more players who have contributed, but what a game overall for the Arizona Coyotes, once again remaining perfect in the month of March. Can they keep this one up? That is a big question. We're going to have to answer that question, see what the Coyotes can be doing as they continue this month. We're going to talk about it on the next episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It all came down to a shootout in Minnesota last night, and Minnie ended up getting it done. Locked On Wild tells you how they handed the Red Wings their 4th loss in a row.
As Heath Ledger so eloquently said in The Dark Knight, a little fight in ya. I like that. Hey everybody, Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, and recapping a 6-5 shootout win for the Minnesota Wild over the Detroit Red Wings. The Wild got some assistance in this one as Alex Nedeljkovic tried to baseball bat a puck out of the air and ended up scoring on himself. Joel Eriksson Ek says thank you. But the Wild also getting 2 goals from Matt Boldy. They get a goal from Kirill Kaprizov. They get a goal from Joel Eriksson Ek. And all in all, despite trailing 4-2, the Wild bounce back, something we haven't seen over the last 10 games. And they end up getting the win in the shootout as Kevin Fiala is able to pick up the shootout winner. And so for the Wild, after that 2-8 stretch, 2-0, and the offense looks to be back on track. Now, the defense and the goaltending, not the best, but at the end of the day, it is about getting the win, surviving fight night, and living to fight another day. For more on the Minnesota Wilds, make sure to follow Locked On Wild wherever you listen to podcasts.
Coming up, more from a busy night in hockey. This is Locked On Now NHL. This episode of Locked On Now is brought to you by Bet Online. It's that wonderful time of year again, March Madness, just a couple of days away. So make sure you head over to Bet Online for prop bets, odds, whatever you want to do, or fill out your brackets and try to guess which teams are going to win. They have you covered completely. So just head over to betonline.net. Welcome back to Locked On Now NHL. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes handed the Colorado Avalanche their first shutout loss of the season in the best performance of the night.
The best performance.
Hold up.
It was certainly a statement win for the Hurricanes as they held the Avalanche scoreless en route to the victory. Locked On Hurricanes explains how Carolina was able to shut out Colorado for the first time this season.
Hey there, hockey fans. Jared Ellis here, host of Locked On Hurricanes. And tonight we saw a matchup between 2 members of the 2019 Wildcard Chaos Squad, the Carolina Hurricanes and the Colorado Avalanche. But wildcard teams no longer. These are the top 2 teams in the NHL, and this was a very hotly anticipated matchup. These teams hadn't played each other in nearly a little over 2 years. And the Carolina Hurricanes ended up being the first team to shut out the Avalanche all season long. Antti Raanta came away with a 36-save shutout performance. The Hurricanes defense really stepped up and was able to shut down the Colorado Avalanche, which no one has been able to really do this season, obviously, because no one has shut them out yet. But I do think Coach Brendan Moore said it best. This game was a really even game. Hurricanes won the first, Avalanche won the second, and Hurricanes obviously won the third period. Our defense really stepped up big, especially in that second period. Jacob Slavin had an outstanding defensive performance in this game. Ethan Bear was able to bounce back. He scored what would end up being the game-winning goal. But Antti Ranta, I think he had the quote of the night. He said, "The season's not over." And now it's time to look ahead to Philly in our next game on Saturday. So make sure you tune into Locked On Hurricanes wherever you get your podcast to get a full breakdown of tonight's game against the Avalanche. And go Canes.
The Avs were ice cold, couldn't find the back of the net against Carolina, and Locked On Avalanche breaks down the loss.
The Colorado Avalanche get shut out for the first time this season in Carolina, a 2-0 loss. But it was, I would say, much closer than that. It was, I mean, you had a 1-0 game, and Carolina gets a empty netter to make it 2-0. But they both came late in the third, and this was a back and forth game by every stretch of the imagination. Carolina really dominated the beginning of the game. The Avalanche took it back and really dominated maybe the later parts of the first and pretty much all of the second. And then the third was just back to back to back to back. And you just kind of knew some freakish kind of play was going to win it. And that's exactly what happened for Carolina.
Yeah, after 5 scoreless periods now from the Avalanche, you think frustrations are now mounting. And it's almost apparent in how that third period played out. And Carolina was able to take advantage.
You have to wonder if this is going to kind of force the issue for the Avalanche as we are in the midst of the trade season. And is this going to do anything to Joe Sakic, make him kind of pull the trigger on a deal? Because the Avs, they're still atop the standings, but as of late, seem to be struggling a little bit more to kind of pull away from teams and really put teams away, as you saw in New Jersey, and them just hanging on for dear life against the Islanders. And here, they just couldn't get anything past Ranta, and you have it, a prize fighter matchup. Basically, this was of two teams that could potentially meet in the Stanley Cup final. And if this is any indication, that would be a phenomenal series. So the Avs lose it 2-0. Doesn't get any easier. They go back home and they face the Calgary Flames, which they played not that long ago, and that was an epic game. So it just gets more difficult for the Avs, and these are ones that they have to start winning.
The Nashville Predators got the win over the Ducks on Thursday, and they're racking up important wins just at the right time. Our Locked On Predators host is happy to see this team is heading in the right direction.
Well, they kind of went cold for a little bit, but the Nashville Predators are heating up yet again. Hey everybody, Nick Morgan here from the Locked On Predators podcast. Nashville beats the Anaheim Ducks 4-1 tonight at a packed and raucous Bridgestone Arena. Yeah, even though the Preds-Ducks rivalry isn't what it was a couple of years ago, and even though the Ducks have kind of fallen off in the playoff race this year, this still felt like a playoff atmosphere. And pretty much any game the Preds play from now until the end of the season is going to feel that way, just because every point in the Western Conference playoff race is going to be so important. Preds got to keep hot. One thing I love about the Preds over the past 3 games has been how much their big guns have stepped up to lead the team to victory. We saw it again tonight. Matt Duchene, 2 goals and an assist. Philip Forsberg, 3 points tonight. UC Saros, another big game in net. He is really finding his stride after a little bit of a rough patch. That's the key for the Nashville Predators. If their big guns are firing on all cylinders, they can match up with any team in the West. And yes, I am including the Avalanche and the Golden Knights, even the Calgary Flames, teams that are really kind of the top tier of the West right now. The Predators have the talent to match them. It's just at times this year, they've fallen off a little bit. They've gotten cold. They've had games where they've made a lot of mistakes. But these past 3 games, they have shown how dangerous a team they can be if they stay focused. That's going to be the key for the Preds going forward. You can listen to our show tomorrow morning on the Locked On Predators podcast. We will be recapping tonight's game and the Preds' continued push for the playoffs.
That's all for us today on Locked On Now NHL. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you check out Locked On NHL and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens. This is Locked On Now.